How I brainwashed myself sober and have been sober for over 7 years. Today, we are going to talk about an important topic, and that is what goes on in the mind of an alcoholic and how to use that to actually help yourself get sober. Now, this is something I wish was available when I was trying to get sober because I didn't understand what was going on in my mind. I understood I had these thoughts, I understood that I had a drinking problem, but I wasn't able to put it together and understand exactly what was going on so that I can get out of it. And the reason this happened is because of what I like to call, and other people like to call, a closed loop, right? A closed loop is a loop that goes around and around and around. And this is your closed loop of thoughts. And I want to bring up a quote by Alan Watts, who is great to listen to, although, disclaimer, he was into some non-sober activities and ended up dying as a drunk, but I think there's a lot we can actually learn from him. And one of my favorite quotes is, "A person who thinks all the time has nothing to think about except thoughts. So he loses touch with reality and lives in a world of illusions." And this is exactly what happens to the alcoholic brain. What happens is we create a world that we cannot get out of because we're in this closed loop. And we have this closed loop of thoughts. These thoughts could be about your upbringing. These thoughts could be about your job. These thoughts could be about pretty much anything, maybe past abuse, maybe people who bother you. And in sobriety, we call these hang-ups. Hang-ups, there we go. And these hang-ups go through our brain over and over. Now, the secret to getting sober and understanding how to create a life that you don't have to escape from is the key of getting out of this closed loop. Now, if you're anything like me, when you go to get sober or when you were drinking and you had all these issues, you walked around thinking that your thoughts created reality. You went through life and you were saying, hey, my thoughts create reality. Thoughts. There we go. We'll try to spell right. My thoughts are actually creating the reality I live in. So if I think things are bad, things are therefore bad. And the mind is like a lens, and you get what you focus on. And if you say, hey, mind, I want you to focus on everything that's bad, it's going to give you a list of reasons why your life is bad. It's going to give you a list of reasons why you can't do something. It's going to give you a list of reasons why you should have a victim mentality. Oh, woe is me. I can't quit drinking. I'm in this world of thoughts. I'm in this world of craziness. Now, what happens is, in addition to having this closed loop, we like to pour alcohol onto our closed loop. Now, when you pour alcohol on this closed loop of thoughts, what happens is it starts to alter the way that you think. It alters the way you think, and it actually changes the way that your brain processes information. This is why when you get drunk, you can't control what you're doing, because it's not actually you controlling it, it's the alcohol controlling it. Now, are you responsible for your actions? Of course you are. Are you responsible for what you do when you drink? Of course you are. But we have to understand that this closed loop is going on. Now, if you guys resonate with me, let me know in the comments below. Let me know on the chat if you are someone who has experienced this closed loop. You go through life and you have these thoughts. And these thoughts seem to repeat themselves. Repeat. There we go. I think I spelled it right. Right? These thoughts tend to repeat themselves over and over and over again. And what happens is you get hung up thinking about them. And because they're repeating, they are going in a cycle. And this is called the working of your mind. The way that your mind works, the way that you process information, the way you think about the world. And what happens is when all these thoughts come in, and you can name your thoughts. Maybe you're thinking about a past relationship. Maybe you're thinking about your job. Maybe you're thinking about your family. Maybe you're thinking about all the things that you screwed up when you were drinking. And you're going through life looking at all these thoughts, and they're cycling. But what you don't know is important. Don't know. All right, and there's several things. I'll use this from, I think it was Werner Erhard who brought this to light. And what he said is that in life, there's several things. There's things you know. Okay, we'll call this number 1. Things you know. Then there's things you don't know. Okay, I don't know how physics works. I like to think I'm smart, but I don't know how that works, right? There's things you don't know. All right, so things you know, this would be like, hey, I know how to do my job. I know that my family lives down the road. I know how my mind works. I know that alcohol is messing up my life, but I don't know what to do about it, right? So that alcohol is ruining my life would be something that you don't know. You know that it's there, but you don't know what to do about it because you don't have the information. The third thing is things you don't know that you don't know. All right? Now, there's certain things in life that I know that I don't know. I don't know trigonometry. I don't even know algebra, barely. I know there's letters and stuff in there, but there's certain things in life that I know. There's certain things in life I don't know, and there's certain things in life that I don't know that I don't know. Now, this third category here, the things in life that you don't know, are things that are outside of the current working of your mind, right? So right here, there could be, let's draw another outline here, and if you like the drawings, let me know. Right, you're out here, over here, okay? Now, in the world, let's say this is the vast world of knowledge. It's a huge world of knowledge. Let's say that you're really smart. You're like Einstein level smart, okay? That surpassed me a long time ago. I'm not anywhere near that. But let's say that in the whole world of knowledge, you have 1% of all knowledge. And that's a stretch, right? You probably don't have 1%. But let's say out of everything there is to know in the universe, you got 1%, okay? Now, is it possible that in that other 99% that you don't know, or maybe even don't know that you don't know, there is a solution to sobriety? What if there's a solution to sobriety and a better life? All right, now this is something that I longed for. When I was drinking, I was going through it. I had this cycle of thoughts. I went and read books. I tried to understand how the brain works. And I knew in my head kind of how this stuff works. I'm like, okay, the key to not drinking is, well, let me think about it. Not drinking, right? That's really the key. But I didn't know the things I didn't know that were the things that would get me sober. I didn't know that the solution to sobriety and the solution to a better life that I so desperately wanted was just outside my reach because I was so prideful that I thought I knew all this stuff. I was like, you can't teach me anything new. I'm sorry, buddy, but I read books and I watch videos and I listen to public radio, right? This is me. And I thought I had all the answers. I thought that my world was reality. But what I didn't realize is that outside of my brain, there was this whole world of knowledge and experience that I did not have. There was the answer to my sobriety lying outside of that. But the problem was, I was like this guy. And I'm trying to solve a problem with the same mindset that got me in that problem in the first place. No new information could come in. No new ideas could come in. No new thoughts could come in. Because, as Alan Watts said, I was a person who thought all the time, and a person who thinks all the time has nothing to think about except thoughts. So he loses touch with reality and lives in a world of illusions. And so when we look at this and we say, okay, I'm losing track of reality. Now, to put this in a grand scheme of things, my grandma was an alcoholic for many, many years. She actually was so much of an alcoholic, and we'll draw some people here just to give you guys an idea. There's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we'll get to 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Now, these people here represent the amount of times my grandma, who was a drunk, was married. Right? So this is however many husbands she had over the course of her years. She started when she was like 15. She drank till she was like 65 or 67, and she ended up dying sober almost 25 years, which is pretty cool. And she was with one guy for the rest of the 25 years, which was kind of amazing. Now, it was kind of a rocky path or anything and everything, but we have to look at that. So my grandma was married 16 times, and what happened was she lived in a world of illusion, there we go, where she thought this stuff was reality, much like me. Fast forward a couple years later, you got your guy Marcus here, and he is living in a world of illusion. He drinks, and he thinks that is the only solution to his problems. And I remember going to therapy, and I remember asking the therapist, I said, I think about these things all the time. I can't get out of my thoughts. I can't change my reality. And I got a lot of work to do because I got to pay for all the stuff that we bought and everything like that. I had a business at the time, and it was kind of floundering, and it was struggling, mostly because I was drinking. But I was so focused on what I wanted, what I needed, what I thought, that if you came in and told me, Marcus, all your thoughts and worries are illusions in your brain. Now, there are some things that are real. Obviously, if there's like an earthquake, you got to prepare for it. It's real. It's not in your mind. It's not an illusion. But most of the things that we think about every day, I think the scientists say that we have about 60,000 thoughts every single day. And if we divide that by the number of minutes a day, let's pull up the calculator here because I don't think I can do this in my brain, right? So if we do 60,000, I think it's like 800 or something like that, 60,000 over 1440, that means 1440, there we go, 1440. That means that we have an average of 41 thoughts per minute. Okay, 41 thoughts per minute. 41 thoughts per minute. Okay? That's a lot of thoughts. And if we look at that and we say, we got these 41 thoughts a minute, that's like one every 1.5 seconds. Okay? Now, the way that thoughts work is they work on a stream, right? So I want you to imagine a stream. And here's your stream of thoughts. Now, let's say you're worried that your boss is going to fire you at work. What happens? Well, out of those 41 thoughts you have every minute, all of a sudden, it starts peaking, and like 10 or 20 of the thoughts you have a minute are all about your job. Or say you get in a fight with your spouse. All of a sudden, those thoughts are about your spouse. And if you're anything like me, about how they're wrong and you're right. And you look at this and you say, okay, these thoughts are like extreme. Or maybe you think about buying a new car and you're like, I want a red Corvette, right? All of a sudden, you start to see red Corvettes everywhere. Didn't see them before, but now, all of a sudden, they're starting to show up everywhere. You're like, what the heck? Did everyone buy a red Corvette the minute that I wanted to buy a red Corvette? Or is it my mind just noticing them? And once we understand this, we understand that our mind is like a lens. And we get what we focus on. If I tell you something that your brain needs to solve, like if I say, hey, I need you to figure out 100 times 36 or 104 times 36, right? You're going to go out there and your brain is going to try to figure this out. Right? You're going to be like, what is that? 104 times 36. You're going to try to figure that out because what I did is I just pointed your mind at something else. Now, back to our illustration here, right? You got this guy, and he's like me, or he's like you, and he's in this world of his own thoughts. He's like, what am I going to do? And what happens is you're trying to solve the problems with the same thought process that caused the problems. So we look at this and we say, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And even when you go to therapy or talk to people, and therapy is good and talking to people is great, but even when you go to that, what's happening is they're pointing your mind at one of the problems so that you could try to solve one of the problems. And then it goes in the loop and it keeps going round like that song, you spin me right round like a record, baby, right round. And it's going around and it's going around. And what happens is you are neglecting the 99% of things you may not know or may not even know that you don't know. For example, one of the things that I used to brainwash myself sober is to say, how do I get out of the loop? How do I get out of the loop? Because the loop kept me drunk. The loop kept me focused, and it didn't matter. I was like in this big cycle loop, and if you threw something at it, it'd just start cycling around. My wife would come and say something, and it'd cycle around. Something would happen at work, it'd cycle around. Something would happen with family, it'd cycle around. And it was this world of depression that was created and being fueled by my alcoholism. And then I drank, thinking it was a solution. Hey, the cycle doesn't happen as bad when I drink. It slows it down a bit. My mind's too fast. I need to slow it down. Or I need to not think about these things, so I'm going to drink and forget about them. How many of you guys drink to forget? A lot of people drink to forget. And we look at this, and the reason you can't forget or deal with a problem is because you're still looking inside that loop for a solution, rather than saying, what is going on outside? And what we do is we first ask ourselves, and we look at this logically, and we say, number one, is this real? Number two, what would happen if? What would happen if I lost my job? Well, I'd probably find a new one. I'd probably be okay. Usually you're going to be okay. What would happen if my family didn't respond to my request? What would happen if? And then we say, how can I get new thoughts? Okay? And I want you to imagine this, right? You imagine this. You got this guy or this gal. Okay, we'll draw a guy with his spiky hair, and we'll draw a gal here with her fancy hair. Pardon the drawings, right? So we have our guy and we have our gal here. And if you ever went through high school, you know that at one point your friend, whether it's a guy or a girl, found someone, right? So these people found each other. And all of a sudden, they become these weird people. They're obsessed with each other. They got their own language. All they think about is each other. They're sitting there across from each other, and the whole world doesn't exist to them other than each other. And what happened is something outside, this person outside, affected this person's thought loop. And now they've infiltrated it. And they've gotten in the thought loop, and now all the thoughts are about this thing. Or maybe someone becomes religious. And they're like, hey, man, all I think about now is church and God and Bible and whatever it is that makes these people religious. And it goes into the thought loop. This is what we call brainwashing. Okay? And not in a bad way. There's a good brainwash and a bad brainwash. The bad one is when other people do it to you and you don't know it's happening. The good one is when you decide that now you can choose to create your own thoughts. You can choose to get new thoughts. But the way this is going to happen is much like the guy or the girl in high school. It needs to come from an outside source. All right? So you're going along and you got all these thoughts. So over the amount of years you've been alive, let's say you've been alive 20 years or 30, or like me, maybe you're 40 years or 50 years or however long you are, maybe 80, right? And you go through, and for all these years, you have been programmed and brainwashed by everything that's happened in your life. You were taught what's bad. You were taught what's good. You were taught what's wrong. You were taught what's right. You were taught what doesn't feel good. You were taught how people should treat you. You were taught how people should act with you. You were taught how to think and feel about certain things. Case in point, you look at marketing. Marketing goes through and it says, hey, if you have this certain car, you're going to feel better about yourself. If you have this certain perfume, you're going to feel better about yourself. If you buy the right house, you're going to feel successful. When in actuality, those feelings have nothing to do with anything external. Because here's the deal. In your brain, in your mind, in your feelings and your life, you have the ability to create feelings whenever you want. You have the ability to create all the feelings you need. You've felt sad. You've felt happy. You've been depressed. You've been angry. You've been excited. You've been depressed. And we look at this and we say, wait a minute. So all these feelings are things that reside in me anyway. All these feelings can be created. And when you look at alcohol, you say, Marcus, I drink alcohol to relax. I drink alcohol so I could feel better. Yeah, welcome to the club. We all did. And some of us still do. And we look at that and say, well, is not the ability to feel better in your brain without alcohol? Like, do you really need that to feel better? Or is it you creating the feeling? And I'll never forget one time when I was drinking. And when I drank, I had a hard time if I couldn't get alcohol. And we had a period where I said I was going to quit drinking. So we stopped having alcohol in the house. And so I would go out to lunch on my break from lunch. I'd drive out to the restaurant. And I'd get my big, tall drink, and I'd have a bunch of beers at lunch. And so I would go there, and I remember one time I went and I sat at lunch, and I was alone, and I was shaky. I couldn't even hold the drink. I was so shaky. And I remember the lady turned the corner with my favorite drink, and I hadn't had anything to drink yet. I had gone 12 hours without drinking. And the lady, the bartender, turned the corner with my drink, and I saw it on the tray. Glistening, beautiful drink. And it came around the corner, and all of a sudden, the drink wasn't on the table. The drink wasn't in my hand. The drink wasn't in my mouth. I had not been chemically altered yet. But I started feeling better because I knew I was going to get that drink. And so what happened was my brain was creating a feeling based on something I was going to get. And so I asked myself, is there a way to create this feeling without having to have the drink? And obviously, there are some exceptions to the rule. If you don't eat, you're going to feel kind of jittery and messed up. We need to eat, right? We need our fuel. But when we talk about stuff like this, there are ways to access these feelings without having alcohol. There are ways to live your life without having alcohol. And when we understand that feelings are nothing more than chemical impulses in your brain. And these chemical impulses are altered by alcohol. They're altered by arguments. They're altered by stress and fear. And they're altered by all this stuff. But what happens is how much of this stuff's actually coming true? With the exception of alcohol, because when we drink, we become drunk, and that's a fact. But an argument doesn't really affect you. Usually, it goes away. Stress usually goes away. Usually the things you're stressed about are okay. Fear usually goes away. But what's happening is you are creating these chemical impulses in your brain. And now, these feelings happen. And you get a feeling. And what happens here is you get that feeling and you try to describe that feeling with words, which are thoughts. And when you understand this and you say, wait a minute, so the feeling is being described by words and thoughts, which words are basically thoughts. You think in the English language or whatever your native language is, and you look at that and you're like, wait a minute, so I didn't even create the language that I use to have these thoughts in? So are these thoughts really my thoughts? Are they mine alone? Or is it the thoughts that are all around? And we start to understand that we're describing these feelings and describing the feelings rather than just having them, right? I want you to imagine back in the day when you had your caveman, right? Here's our caveman, and our caveman's here with his big caveman bat or whatever, and he's going to get his woolly mammoth. We'll try to draw a woolly mammoth here. Here's our woolly mammoth. It's going to be a pretty jacked up looking woolly mammoth, but hey, you know what? We got it going on here, right? And he's going after his woolly mammoth here, and he's out there. Now, this caveman existed before the invention of language. Interesting, right? Language is the operating system of your brain. And guess what? It's not perfect. So this guy goes out there, and the woolly mammoth turns around and starts charging him, and all of a sudden, his brain produces fear and adrenaline. Fear, there we go. And adrenaline, right? Now, for us, in 2021, we're going to describe it. I'm afraid because I'm a wuss. You know, that woolly mammoth, I shouldn't be afraid of it. I'm at the zoo, for crying out loud, and he's behind glass. If there was a woolly mammoth at the zoo. And we have to look at that, and we have to understand, now we're trying to describe this stuff. But some feelings just don't need to be described. Some stuff doesn't, right? I think, like, Dr. Freud might have missed the mark on some things. I don't think everything leads to the things that he said it led to, because I don't think I feel that way, and I don't think I think that way. And so we understand this, and we understand that the key to making this work is to get outside thoughts. And when I was in my world of thoughts and my world of drinking, I ruminated on the same exact stuff over and over. How many of you guys can relate to this? You're like, I ruminate on the same stuff. I've been talking about the argument with my mom for 20 years. I've been struggling with money for 50 years. Or like my grandma, she's been having problems with men for 16 marriages, right? 60 years or something like that. And we look at that, and the reason it's happening is because you are not allowing outside thoughts to penetrate the thought cycle. You're not letting them in. What you do is you take them and you put them in your existing knowledge. And you say, hey, I know where that fits. And what this is called is categorical reference. Categorical reference. And to show you how this works, here's what I want to do. Okay? I'm going to list some words, and I want you to put them in these boxes. I'm going to show you how your mind works this way. Okay? We're going to put animals. We're going to put numbers. We're going to put feelings. And we're going to put cars. All right? So if I say Toyota Corolla, where's your mind put that? If I say sad, where does your mind put that? If I say golden retriever, where's your mind going to put it? If I say 1962, where are you going to put that? And what happens is your brain is looking for shortcuts to categorize things based on what you already know. Think about that. So what you're doing, I give you new information. Someone gives you new information. You put it into a box, and you put it in that box and put it on the shelf because you know what? You already know it. Or you try to understand it based on what you already know. And this categorical reference is a good thing, right? Our brain did a good job because in some things it's good. I don't need to know every type of tiger if I'm out in the jungle and I'm getting chased by a tiger. I just need to know how to run like hell. That's all I need to know, right? I don't need to know, hey, you know, that's a saber-toothed tiger from the old English word of whatever, and he's got this, and you can tell how many kids he's at. I don't know, right? And we look at this, And we say, how then can we focus on the stuff that we don't know that we don't know? And I think those notes are up here quite a bit, right? How do we focus on the stuff that we don't know that we don't know? And we have to understand this and say, hey, I need to first humble myself and realize I don't know every damn thing, right? It's like, what was it on Beverly Hills Cop? He says, you're a good cop, but you don't know every fucking thing. You know, you're a good cop, but you don't know everything that's out there. And you know what? We don't know everything that's out there. And so what we need to do is we need to understand that we don't know everything. We need to understand, hey, there's a lot of knowledge that's beyond my grasp. There's a lot of things out there that are beyond my grasp. And if I take those things and I put them in a neat little box with a fancy bow on it, and I say, hey, this is where this goes. There it is. Look at me. I'm so smart. I put this here. This is where meditation goes. This is where this thought goes. This is where this thought goes. And this is where this goes. And what happens is because I have to focus and I have to look at this and say, wait a minute, how do we do this? And the way you do it, and the way that I brainwashed myself sober, is by putting new thoughts in my brain constantly. I needed to do this. I needed to be relentless because I was fighting against 34 years of thoughts just coming in my brain, thinking I know everything, and not being able to stay sober. If I know everything, why can't I stay sober? If I know everything, why is this not working for me? And so what I needed to do is I needed to get outside thoughts that were outside my current belief system. So if I believed a certain thing about religion, I would listen to the opposite. Or if I believed a certain thing about sobriety, I'd listen to the opposite. And I wouldn't take everything as gospel truth, but I would go out there and say, hey, I'm going to listen to a talk every day. And I have done this every single day without fail since I've been sober. Every night, I go to bed, I put my earphones in, there's my earphones, and I listen to a talk. Even if I fall asleep to it, that's okay. And I listen to a talk that expands my brain. Expand. Because I know if I listen to something outside my current knowledge, it's going to focus my brain outside of my current thought loop. And side effect is you get to learn a lot of shit, which is pretty cool, right? So we could go through and we could say part of my sobriety plan is going to be to listen to something new every day. And if you go through, I am a nutcase when it comes to audiobooks, and I think I have like every award the audiobook app can give you because I've gotten way too many audiobooks, but you don't need that many. You can find MP3s for free. We have them in our Talk Sober course. And when you go through, you could look at some of the audiobooks I have to see kind of what we're talking about. I have books by Ram Dass, who was a spiritual teacher. I have a quest book from a spiritual thing, Power of Silence, Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. Flatland, I thought that was interesting. It was an interesting novel, which is kind of crazy. But what it does is it shows you how there are other dimensions you don't even know exist. We can't describe the fourth dimension. Awakening the Soul, Liberation Upon Hearing, all kinds of stuff. And there's like 400 different books that I've downloaded over the years. There's tons of MP3s I've downloaded. And what this did is it showed me that I don't know everything. And it showed me that all my stuff, all my problems, everything I'm worried about and barking about and will talk to for endless ages to anyone who will listen is much like that analogy earlier where we said, hey, if this is what you know, right? This is what you know. This is all the knowledge in the universe. All right? And that's probably an overstretch. I don't think we maybe make a little tinier dot, right? This is all the knowledge in the universe. So what I want to do is I want to tap into this. I want to learn about this because what it does is it takes that thing that I thought was huge, big problem. Marcus, you don't understand my problem. And it put it on a scale. And it showed me that my problem wasn't as big as I thought. Because there's a lot more out there. And when you start to do this, and you might even start to feel it happening now as I'm talking, you might start to think, wow, everything that I have, everything I think, I am but a small fraction on the timeline of the universe, which might not even be a timeline. They've actually studied it and said, hey, there might be multiple timelines. And to other people, like if there's a godlike being, they might see all the time stacked up. They might see all your problems all stacked up at once. They might see it in 5 dimensions or 10 dimensions. And now we have our problem and we say, wait a minute, I got my problem, but there's like people starving in other countries. There's this going on. There's this going on. There's a planet. Did you know that if you go out at night, I love going out at night. That's part of the reason I moved to Florida, because I can sit out at night when it's not a lightning storm. Well, I can under the awning when there's a storm. It's kind of cool, right? You could go out at night and you could look at the stars. And you look at the stars and the moon's out there, and you got all these stars. And I want you to do this tonight. And I want you to do one of 2 things. First, I want you to do what Werner Erhard said. Werner Erhard said, go out at night and tell the stars your problem. Get your big problem and yell it at the stars. And see if they dance for you. I've been doing that a couple times. They haven't danced yet. Second thing I want you to realize is that when you see a star, let's say you're looking at this star here. Did you know that that star is so far away that it might be gone by the time you see it? Did you know that if you were to go and travel to that star, and you travel to that star, and you're sitting on the star, and you're looking at me through your gigantic telescope, and here I am on Earth, and you're on the star, and I'm looking back at you in my giant telescope. Did you know that if you wave, it's going to take me like 5 years to see that wave? You might not even be there. You might be gone. You might be on your way home. You could actually be standing right next to me. And I'm looking at you in real time over here, because the amount of time it takes for that light to travel to me, you could probably come back and be standing next to me and be like, hey, wait a minute. Is that me over there on that star? What the hell? Are you, what? And this is the kind of stuff that keeps me sober, because I realize that nothing matters. I realize that everything in my world is made up of my thoughts. And this is amazing. We live in a universe that I could see something that doesn't even exist. And I'm sitting here wondering about, I had an argument. I might lose my job. Oh, the restaurant didn't have a seat for me. This person should act this way. This person should act this way. But when I take myself out of the world of illusion created by my thoughts, and I realize I am but a speck in the existence of the entire universe, and I'm one page on the entire page of history, or on the entire book of history that is time. And I start to realize it's an exciting thing to be alive. It's a wonderful thing to understand that so much out there is going on, but I'm just hung up on all my little stuff. And now what happens is, because I went and listened to crazy-ass stuff by crazy-ass people, I now have a new outlook or philosophy on life. And when something happens that seems big, it shocks me. Last year we had something that happened in our business and I was afraid. I sat in here and my brain actually thought about drinking. 6 years sober, I was like, I could go drink. But then I was able to laugh it off and say, you know what? It's not that big a deal. And guess what? It went away. The thing went away. It solved its own problem. And here I was worrying, ready to go drink and break my sobriety over something that seemed big, but it went away on its own. And guess what? Everything you've gone through went away on its own, or you wouldn't be here. And we have to understand that we are part of a vast world with 8 billion people. The world is so big, my grandma found 16 people to marry, right? It's a huge world. And I love my grandma, God rest her soul. I wish I could have seen her one last time before she passed, but because of my hang-ups and because of my stuff, I didn't see her. And I regret that. I wish I did. Right? Hang-ups. All this stuff causes hang-ups. And what I want to submit to you today is that your hang-ups are of your own making. And when you get to a part where you can actually say, hey, wait a minute, that was something I would have used to drink over. I would have. But now I don't need to. Because in the grand scheme of things, my life is so much more than I thought it was before. When people say, hey, who's that person? That person's worth $1 billion. That person is a janitor. That person is a scientist. No, they're not. That person's a human being and a person. They might do science. They might have money, but they are not that. And you are not the sum of everything that you do. You are not the sum of everything that's been done to you. You are much more. And when we look outside the universe and say, wait a minute, there's this vast, we don't even know where the universe ends. Right? You go there, is there like a big brick wall at the end that says the end? And if so, what the hell's behind it? And we start to understand that life is way, way bigger than our problems. Life is way bigger than my current way of thinking. Life is way bigger than my cycle of thinking. And I get to be part of that. And as Ram Dass always says, drop your hang-ups and join the dance. There's a dance of life out there. And yeah, there's bad stuff. And yeah, there's good stuff. All right now. Right now, there's someone having the best day of their life. Right now, there's someone having the worst day of their life. Right now, someone's having the first day of their life. And right now, someone's having the last day of their life. And what we choose to put on that is how we choose to look at it. I used to look at it as, okay, someone dies. I'm sad. It's bad. I wish I had them. They were taken from me. Now I look at it and I'm like, they weren't taken from me. They were given to me. I got that person in my life for this amount of time. What a great blessing that is. What a great thing that is to be able to have this thing. But see, what happens is we live in a world of lack and a world of not enough. Right? You see this. It's a great song by the band Tool. It's a great band. And they say, don't these talking monkeys know that Eden has enough to go around? Is there not enough food on the planet to solve the problems? There are. There's enough food for everyone. I think America throws enough food away to solve America's own homeless crisis. Right? You could solve it. But why isn't it solved? Because certain people have these thought loops that say, I need to be on top. I deserve more. I should have this. I should have that. These people should get off their asses and get a job. These people should do that. These people should do that. And I used to think that way. I used to think, hey, people with no food should go work. Then I realized, well, there's not enough jobs in the world to go around. So what do we need to do to solve political problems? We need to think outside the current way of thinking. Think outside of it. The answer is not here, because this is what created the problem. And in your life, this created the problem. And I think it was Einstein who said you cannot solve a problem with the same thinking that created the problem. You can't do it, because that thinking created the problem. You need new thinking, and the best way to get new thinking is to listen to new ideas and to hear new things that you might have agreed with. Actually, I learned a lot from Werner Erhard. I'm talking about him a lot, but there's some weird stuff. There's some good stuff. And I think his stuff is like Alan Watts for the yuppies. I think that's what the whole idea was. Study him, you can come to your own conclusion. But he was in the 80s when there was these like, we're not hippies anymore. We got business suits And we kind of want the old hippie stuff, and he packaged it and sold it and made a bunch of money. But what Werner Erhard said, I believe what he said, what was it? I lost my train of thought. We'll take some questions and hopefully it'll come back. But what he was talking about was this idea of getting new thoughts. This idea that whatever you believe your world is, this is outside of your mentality. And you have to understand it, right? People who have a lack mentality, there are ways to solve all these problems, right? Like, you don't need nuclear weapons to solve these problems. Nobody needs them. You don't need that. You don't need wars to solve the problems. There's ways to solve this stuff without going back to the thought loops. And when it comes to alcohol addiction, there are ways to solve these problems that are outside of what you currently think. And one of the things that I would encourage everyone to do, if you guys like this channel and what I say resonates with you, you can actually support the channel and get new thoughts every day from my thoughts, which are kind of crazy, but hey, you're listening to me, so maybe you guys like them. I don't know, right? And you look at this, you can go over to talksober.com, right, like this. Click the big yellow button. It'll prompt you to sign up. It's like $27 a month or something like that. And you can go through and sign up. It's actually really easy. Let me see what the sign up page looks like here. Well, you guys could go look at it. And then after you sign up, you'll get access to all these letters that I wrote about sobriety. These were written over a 6-year period where I talked about what I did every day to get sober, what I went through, different things I struggled with and stuff like that. And so we go through and you could print out all these things. You could watch a video, listen to the audio on the topic, and you can go through and get new thoughts, like different things I had when dealing with denial. Hurricane of thoughts. When I moved to Florida and flipped out about a hurricane because I watched the news too much. 2-foot drop, moderation, brainwashing and mind control, a glimpse of my former self, all kinds of stuff. And you can go through and you can start listening to these and start getting new thoughts. And that, in my opinion, is the key to brainwashing yourself into a sober life. Let's take some comments here and we'll wrap it up. Let's see. Trevelyan, good to have you here. Megan, good to have you here. Tina, Nick, let's see. Steven says you become what you think about all day long. Yes and no. I think you think about what you think about all day long, but you don't become it. Like if we become our thoughts, that would be, a lot of people would become rich. And that's not exactly true. A lot of people think about getting rich and they don't become rich. But I think that is a good quote. I think it really understands what's going on in our mind and how things work that way. Megan says, I drank to forget most of my drinking career. Yeah, and, that's common. And what we need to do is come to grips with it. Is there a world that exists where you can be understanding of what you went through? Some of the things I did when I drank, I'm not proud of. Some of the things I did when I drank, I don't like. But I had to come to grips with, hey, I was drinking. This was my current mindset. And one of the things that I put in my brain is if I had your upbringing, if I lived like you and I had the brain like you, I would be you. There's no way around it. You are living a program that was played out. Very, very interesting thought. And I think if we think that, we can have empathy not only for ourselves, but for other people as well. Okay, Mama Lisa, thanks for that. Glad you like this talk. Let's see here. Mama says, I sound like the water boy. My mama says, we all think we've got the answers and boy, oh boy, we're wrong. Yes, exactly. Let's see here. I was living not only in the closet drinking, but by being always right in my decisions. Absolutely. I always thought I was right. And now I'm like, hey, I got these ideas. And yeah, I'll probably wake up 20 years from now and be like, yeah, there's some things I was wrong about. And now I can understand that. I don't have to be right all the time. Kyle, day one, I need to stay sober for myself, not because the outside world is affecting me. Absolutely. And guess what? Your internal thoughts when you get sober are going to affect your outside world in a way that makes everything seem to be better, which is cool. Let's see here. Where's Terry? Terry is on a road trip. Let's see. Parkerson, someone posted a comment earlier that said, name it, not numb it. Yeah, that works. You don't have to numb what you think is real in your life. Let's see. I'm powerful. This is powerful. I'm digging that. Thanks for sharing. Thanks, Megan. I like Ram Dass. Yeah, me too. I'd buy cars when I was having a few drinks, then be like, what the heck was I thinking? I'm liking today sober, no hangovers, and I'm not sorry for last night. And not saying sorry for last night. Yeah, that's awesome. I love not having hangovers. Grim Reaper, day zero again. One of my issues is I focus on other people's problems and world events and become overwhelmed thinking their problems are my problems. Yeah, that's what's known as distraction. You're distracting yourself from your own stuff rather than focusing on your stuff. You focus on something else because it's easier to point a finger than it is to look at the four pointing back at us. And I think when we look at it and we say, hey, look, what are my problems anyway? All right, let's list them out. And I think you'll find out it's not as big as you thought. Angel just made it 3 months without a drink. Congrats, Angel. Nick, let's see. Kyle, I can do that. I have the desire. Drinking is not the only problem with my marriage. It's crazy to interact with a real person. Yeah, it is. And, you can look at that, and your marriage can get better based on perspective. I had marriage issues when I was drinking, mostly because I was drinking, but also because my perspective was off. I thought that my spouse needed to do what I wanted. I didn't realize, hey, that's her own person. She could do what she wants to do. What about her needs? What about her stuff? And I looked at the perspective, and it changed big time. All right, let's see here. Yes, lack mentality versus abundance. Absolutely. Grim Reaper says, another issue is brainwashed to thinking. A way to get out of my mind to stop thinking about 1,000 things a minute is to drink at night. Very common problem. A lot of people have issues with OCD and alcoholism. And if you are trying to get sober, go see a doctor. I'm not a doctor, as the disclaimer tells you down there. But yeah, I think the key to looking at erasing an active mind is to realize it's there and don't pay attention to it. My brain could think about whatever it wants. I don't have to bite, right? It's like that nagging person, like my brother. My brother is a wonderful salesman because he's relentless. He will talk you into buying something on the sheer fact that you want to shut him up, right? You're like, dude, shut up. But when I stop paying attention to it, it goes away, right? If I'm like, hey, you know what, whatever, I'm going to go do this. And he'll keep talking and keep talking. Pretty soon he'll shut up. The mind works the same way as my brother. And if you ignore it, it'll go away. You don't need to take it seriously. There's no problem with your mind. It's a gift. It's the way it adapted. It's the way it adapted. I have OCD thoughts where I got to wake up in the middle of the night and be like, did I shut my office? I have my office out here in the backyard, and I always worry about it, right? And because I smoke, I'm like, did I put my cigar out? Is it out? Is it going to catch the office on fire? And I worry about it all the time. And so I come out here and I check and I laugh and I'm like, yeah, my brain, whatever. Silly old thing. Don't have to worry about it. But I think the key is to understand that. Steven says, funny you said that. I had 6 years of sobriety, thought I had it licked, went out for one drink, and was trapped for another 3 years of nightmares. Exactly. And that's why I don't drink, because I don't want to be trapped, and I don't want my mind to go back in the loop. I don't want back in the loop. Once I get out of the loop, I did all this work to get out of it. To go back into it would be going back into hell, and I don't want that. Karen says your brain was dirty. It needed to be washed. Absolutely. Stephen, our minds can only entertain one thought at a time, and it's up to us to allow that through or not. Exactly. What we focus on expands. It's actually like the river analogy. Thoughts are like rivers. They're going through. It's going through. You don't have to catch the fish. Let it swim. Some of them are just fine. Just let them swim. Okay, Trek, that's good to know. You know, you become more regular after quitting drinking. It's definitely a good thing. All right, guys. Well, I think that's it for today. If there's any pressing questions, let me know. If you want to support the channel and you like what we're doing and want to help us reach other alcoholics, go to talksober.com, click the yellow button. Again, we don't want to just ask for donations. I want to give you something that's of value. And I think this is of value. We worked really hard on creating this. We're turning it into a book. You got MP4s. You got stuff you can listen to. And try it out. Listen to something new every day, whether it's a recovery talk, whether it's one of these Talk Sober videos or talks, whether it's reading the course, if you like reading that stuff, it's like a 30-day course, whether it's, Ram Dass or Alan Watts or whoever it is. Put new stuff in your brain. DMC says, I used to drink to stop the negative thoughts and social anxiety. Realize that social anxiety will go away, usually in about 15 minutes, and it'll be okay. It usually does. Like, I found out, it took 15 minutes whether I drank or not to be comfortable, And so, that would work. Morge says, unfortunately, got stumbled 2 months ago and was drinking a lot, beer by beer, about 15 a day. Now I've quit and I'm staying sober for about 2 weeks. What to do to not do it again? Change your thoughts. Go to meetings if that's your thing. Go to Talk Sober, sign up for the course, read it every day. Listen to new stuff. Really focus on it. Kyle says, wow, same here. My relationship is the reason I drank last night. I didn't even really enjoy it. Just wanted to piss off my wife. Bad idea. Super bad hangover. Anyways, stay sober. Absolutely, and I used to do that. I used to drink to show people I wasn't an alcoholic. Yeah, how smart was that? But I realized, you know what? The key to making this work for me was getting new thoughts and understanding that my thoughts were flawed. There's a therapy term, maladaptive behavior. It's maladaptive thought process. And when we start to realize that we can change it, not by taking control. You're not going to control your mind. It's going to do what it's going to do. But you can put new stuff in it to change the flow of the river. Change what goes on in the river, change the way you see things, and change your ability to let go of things that really plague you and cause you to drink. So, glad to see you guys here. Subscribe, click the bell, hop over to TalkSober.com, sign up. Look forward to seeing you in there. Start going through this stuff day by day. Let me know how it helps. Bring it up. Come on every Thursday. Tell us how it's working for you. And guys, this is really the key for me getting sober, was putting new thoughts in my head every day. Thanks again for watching. Subscribe. Smash that like button to help this with the YouTube algorithm. And I'll see you inside TalkSober.com. Thanks, guys. See you next week.